Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. The man, Dan Doggett, is back today from noon to 3, so once my show concludes at noon, leave Indy's Sports Ticket on and stay tuned in. That way you can listen to Dan's show. He's back today. And someone who won't be back, hopefully, is Brandon Aiyuk going back to San Francisco. As of yesterday, San Francisco 49er wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk officially requested a trade. And the Indianapolis Colts should undoubtedly try to trade for this guy. There's no doubt in my mind that the Colts should have an offer in front of John Lynch, the 49ers general manager, 10 minutes ago. They, like, as soon as it was announced, they should have called and said, hey, what do you want for Brandon Aiyuk, right? Like, all these Colts fans, all these Colts people, all these Chris Ballard believers brag about how much cap space the Colts have. Oh, we've got cap space. We can go add good players whenever we need to. Why don't we add a good player right now? Why don't we go and add an outstanding weapon like Brandon Aiyuk? The evidence is there. When young quarterbacks are given proven weapons, they improve. Jalen Hurts. Okay, the Eagles go out. And who do they add? They add A.J. Brown. And Jalen Hurts' numbers soar. Pun not intended there. Tua with the Dolphins. What did they do? They go out. They sign Tyreek Hill. And what did Tua's numbers do? He looked like an absolute bust. It's now looking like a halfway decent NFL quarterback. Josh Allen had 2 horrendous seasons in Buffalo. He was terrible. And what did they do? They go out. They make a trade for Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs shows up, and what happens? Josh Allen all of a sudden is the second best quarterback in the NFL. Proven weapons help young quarterbacks. So let's give Anthony Richardson a proven commodity at wide receiver. Because let's be honest about this Colts receiving core. Michael Pittman Jr., he's a 2. He's not a 1. Okay, he's a good receiver, but not a great one. Josh Downs, great in the slot, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver. He doesn't have the size to play on the outside. Okay, I'm excited about Adonai Mitchell. You're probably excited about Adonai Mitchell, right? We see the 4.3 40 and we're like, oh man, we got somebody who's fast, right? But here's the thing. He's unproven, and proven commodities are better than unknown commodities. I know for a fact that Brandon Aiyuk can perform at an elite level in the NFL. Okay, I don't know about Adonai Mitchell. I've seen it for 1 year from Josh Downs. Like, I think he's going to be good, but I don't know that he is. Okay? So, look, could Adonai Mitchell be the next great wide receiver? Sure, he could. But he could also be a bust. We don't know. Nobody knows what Adonai Mitchell is going to be. And given Chris Ballard's track record, if I had to guess between Adonai Mitchell being an absolute stud and Adonai Mitchell being a bust, given Chris Ballard's track record, I would lean towards bust. So go out and trade a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, one of the most important things in life is knowing who you are and what you're good at. Okay, and if Chris Ballard wants to keep his job, if Chris Ballard wants to cut his hair at some point, because he said he's not cutting his hair or whatever until he wins a Super Bowl. If he wants to cut his hair, at some point, Chris Ballard has to come to this realization that he is not good at drafting players. He's not. He's not very good at it. Okay, ESPN continues to release their top 10 players at every position based on votes from NFL executives, GMs, and coaches. And only three Colts have popped up. That's it. So at some point, Chris Ballard has got to realize that he's just simply not good at drafting players. The most important thing anyone can know is who they are. It's important to know what you're good at and what you're bad at. Okay, for example, let's look at squirrels. If squirrels thought for some reason that they were good hunters, they would probably be extinct. Okay, they would get killed by things that can actually hunt. Right? But squirrels know that they're great gatherers, right? So they climb up the peach tree in your backyard and they steal peaches. Okay, that's what they do. They know what they're good at and they know what they're bad at. Chris Ballard has got to realize that he is not good at drafting players. So he has to figure out how to do the job another way. Okay, like you don't only have to build teams through the draft. Okay, Chris Ballard has made it plain as day that he doesn't like signing players in free agency. I don't understand that, but he's made it clear that that just isn't how he wants to operate. So perhaps he should start trading some of these draft picks for players. Let's be honest. Let's say the Colts have a down year. I think that the worst record that the Colts have this year is they go 7-9. Okay, if they go 7-9, they'll have somewhere around the 11th pick in the NFL draft next year. What are the chances that Chris Ballard takes the 11th pick in next year's draft and drafts somebody better than Brandon Aiyuk? I would say not very high. In part because Chris Ballard isn't very good at drafting, but I'd also say that because Brandon Aiyuk is a great player, and most players that are drafted don't turn into great players. They don't. Okay, if whoever gets drafted at 11 overall next year is as good as Brandon Aiyuk, then they're going to make a lot of money in the NFL, and they're going to play for a very long time. Okay, like that's kind of my thing. Okay, like if you're drafting in the first round and you feel like there is a player available that is better than whoever you're going to draft, you should probably give up that first round pick to go and get that player. And that's probably about what it would take for the Colts to acquire Brandon Aiyuk. Give up a first round pick, right? You may have to give up some salary. I don't know how that part of trading works in the NFL, but either way, Brandon Aiyuk would be an upgrade, and Brandon Aiyuk would solve issues that the Colts clearly have. Okay, he'd provide explosiveness, right? Because the Colts need more of that. Rookie Adonai Mitchell is not enough explosiveness for this to be a great offense. It just isn't. So he'd provide explosiveness, and he'd extend the receiver depth chart with 3 legitimate players that we know are at least reliable. Michael Pittman Jr., Brandon Aiyuk, and Josh Downs. Those would be the 3 players at wide receiver when they ran onto the field and the Colts went with 3 wide. I'd be like, okay, I have faith in all 3 of these guys. Because as of right now, Alec Pierce, he isn't reliable. As of right now, Adonai Mitchell, okay, like I'm sure we're going to be hearing stories coming out of training camp here in a couple weeks that Adonai Mitchell looks awesome. I don't care. I don't trust it. I don't have faith in it until I see it consistently on Sundays. So the Colts need more depth in that wide receiver room, especially if they want for Anthony Richardson to be successful this year. Chris Ballard, I know you're listening. I know you are. Do everyone a favor and trade for Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, whoever you draft in the first round next year won't be as good as he is. And here's the other thing. If you draft Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to be a better team. So you won't be picking 11th. You'll be picking, hopefully, 22nd or something because you made the playoffs. Okay? Like he's a good player who will elevate this Colts roster immediately. And more importantly, he'll elevate Anthony Richardson immediately. Whoever the Colts draft in the first round next year will more than likely not be as good as Brandon Aiyuk is. Okay? He's a guy who can elevate the team, and the Colts should trade for him yesterday. He's that good of a player. And I want to continue to hammer home this idea that Chris Ballard has not done a great job of drafting. When you make a list of the best players on this Indianapolis Colts roster, Okay, you obviously have to name Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and DeForest Buckner. Those are probably the three best players on the roster. After that, probably Michael Pittman Jr., and then you get to Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. And Colts fans swear by these two linebackers. Okay? Like, I get on Twitter after games, and people rave, and I mean rave, about how great Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed are. Okay? They're both super great linebackers in the eyes of Colts fans. Okay? Like, they wax poetic about these two guys all the time, especially Zaire Franklin. Okay, I don't know if Colts fans are fond of Zaire Franklin because there's a city in Indiana not far from Indy that is called Franklin, but Colts fans love this guy. I don't understand it. I think he's average at best. Meanwhile, these delusional Colts fans think he's the best thing since sliced bread. Like, he's fine. He's fine. EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin are fine. Okay, they are average NFL linebackers. They fill gaps. They make tackles. That's really it, though. Okay, they don't change the game in any way, shape, or form. Right? There's no Ray Lewis effect of we can't run towards this guy. Okay, like there's just, it's not a thing. Right? They're fine. They do their jobs, and they don't really go above that. Right? They just like, okay, we'll fill gaps, we'll fall back into our zones, and whatever. That's kind of it. Sometimes they don't do their jobs, and it makes me want to jump through the TV and yell at Gus Bradley and those dudes. Okay? Because they're average. They're fine. It's whatever. And I'm sure that there are Colts fans right now that probably turned it off. They're like, oh, you're wrong. Whatever. They think I'm wrong. Which is fine, right? If you disagree with me, you're allowed to disagree with me. That's fine. But here's the thing. You can disagree with me all you want. Smart NFL executives, scouts, and coaches agree with me. ESPN is continuing to release the top 10 players at every position according to NFL executives, coaches, and scouts. And they released the top 10 linebackers in the NFL yesterday. Here is the list. Number 1, Fred Warner of the 49ers. The guy deserves to win a Defensive Player of the Year award at some point. Roquan Smith of the Ravens is on there. Matt Milano of the Bills. Patrick Queen of the Steelers. Played for the Ravens last year. That was a nasty linebacking core. A large part of why the Ravens made it to the AFC championship game. Nick Bolton of the Chiefs. Whenever I look at these top 10 lists, it feels like the Chiefs have someone on every single list. And it's why they are the best team in the NFL. And it's why they have a decent chance of three-peating for the first time in NFL history. It's almost like when you draft well, your team's good. I don't know. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah of Cleveland is on the list at 6. Tremaine Edmonds of the Chicago Bears at 7. Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints at 8. Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, together for the 49ers. Nasty, fast, sideline to sideline, one of the better linebacking cores in the NFL. And then finally, out of Jacksonville, holding the 10th spot, is Foyesade Olukun. I hope I said that right. I doubt that I did. But those are the top 10 linebackers in the NFL, according to executive scouts and coaches. No Colts on there. What a surprise. Probably surprised a lot of Colts fans because they think these two guys are great. Now, first off, I completely agree with this list. Okay, I definitely agree with the notion that all of these players are better than Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Secondly, here is yet again another list voted on by NFL executives, general managers, and coaches that do not include a single Colt. Now, when I look at this list, the thing that jumps out to me the most is the pure speed of this list. Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, and Patrick Queen are the fastest players on the field, it seems like. I remember when Patrick Queen was playing at LSU, he was a running back coming out of high school. And when he shows up at LSU's campus and they're like, do you want to play running back or do you want to play linebacker? And he sat back and he was kind of looking at everything and he was like, oh, let me play linebacker because those guys get paid more, right? So he's got running back speed. He runs like a 4.3, right? Like these are fast guys. They cover incredible amounts of ground when they're running sideline to sideline. Those three guys in particular. And when I would watch, because I watch an incredible amount of football, when I would watch the 49ers or the Ravens, right, or really any of the guys on this list, and I would watch how these linebackers move, it was crazy. And then I would turn on the Indianapolis Colts and I would watch Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. It looked like they were moving in slow motion compared to those guys. It's a night and day difference. And now I will be the first to admit I don't know everything about football. Okay, I don't know everything about sports in general, but I know what different looks like. And I know what average looks like. For example, I don't watch a lot of hockey, but I watch the Stanley Cup. And you sit back and you watch the game and there are several, good players on the ice. And then Connor McDavid gets the puck and you're like, "Oh, that's different." Okay, I think that that's something that everyone that watches sports can point out, like, "Oh, this guy has a different gear," or "This guy's size and speed is just different." Right? And so if you can identify what's different, you can also identify what average looks like. Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed are average. Okay, they don't have the speed. They don't make the plays that the other guys on that list above them do. They just don't. They don't. They don't have the speed. They don't have the lateral quickness or whatever it is that makes a great linebacker great. Okay, they don't cover sideline to sideline like Roquan Smith does. Now, once again, I am not saying that Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed suck. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, I'm just saying that they are average. Okay, like draft after draft after draft happens, and Chris Ballard drafts guys that are below average to average, with the exception of Quentin Nelson and maybe Jonathan Taylor. Outside of that, I look around and I see a lot of average. And when I look at the Indianapolis Colts record, it reflects that. It's a lot of 9-8s. There is. That's who they are. They are average under Chris Ballard. And I'm just waiting for Jim Irsay to be sick of being average, because that's just the worst place to be. No one wants to talk about things that are average. Okay, that's boring. That's what it is. People want to talk about things that are great, or they want to talk about things that are terrible. That stuff that hangs out in the middle, no one really cares for. And I'm kind of waiting for Jim Irsay to stop caring for it as well. Now, something that people do really care for is Indiana Fever phenom Caitlin Clark. The new numbers are in. The Caitlin Clark effect is undeniable. I will share those numbers with you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Tired of hearing scary radio ads about the IRS? Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, we have a solution. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS with zero risk to you. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with a BBB. End your tax nightmare today by visiting TRA.com or call 800-583-6580. That's 800-583-6580.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper, and you can get it online?
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, maybe you're watching live on Twitter, maybe you're watching the stream on YouTube. Head over there, Indy's Sports Ticket, subscribe, join the chat, do all those fun things. Or maybe you're listening in the car. Maybe you're listening in on 1430 AM, or you're tuned in to that Indy Sports Ticket streaming app. Now, tonight, a lot of people will be tuned in to watching the Indiana Fever play against the Dallas Wings, even though the Dallas Wings are terrible. 5-19 on the year. I would say that that's not very good. The game is at 7:30 tonight on ESPN. And, I find it oftentimes that when people tune in to watch any sporting event, they want to watch, they want to watch a good game. But more than anything, they want to be entertained. And that's going to happen when you watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. The Fever are coming off of a 5-game stretch where they played against some of the best teams in the league. They went 3-2 during that stretch, right? Playing the Aces, beating the Liberty, beating the Lynx, beating the Mercury, all teams that have firmly secured spots in the WNBA playoffs. During this 5-game stretch, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell all played well, right? They upped their game. It was really impressive. The defense was better. Shout out to Christy Sides. She has figured out a way to get this team to play a little bit of defense. And it's amazing what a little bit of defense will lead to when you have this many offensively gifted players as the Fever do. Like, they have so many girls on that team that can score. Obviously, the head of that snake is Caitlin Clark. So it's impressive they are fun to watch. And they get a break tonight from playing against some of the best teams in the league when they take on the Dallas Wings. Once again, that game at 7:30 on ESPN. Dallas Wings, not very good. Should be a win. Could be a big Caitlin Clark game. I'm sure that I will be talking to Tony East about that game later today. He's joining me at 11:20. We're going to talk Fever. We're going to talk Caitlin Clark. We're going to talk the Pacers. We're going to talk Jarris Walker. My guy played well yesterday. So that's all happening at 11:20. So they have this break tonight, and then 4 out of their next 5 games come against some of the better teams in the WNBA. So they need to win tonight. Okay, it's important to win the gimmies. The best teams in any league don't lose gimmies. They don't. Okay, the Las Vegas Aces, like, they don't lose to the Mystic. They don't. All right, they don't. Right, the best teams in the league don't lose to the worst teams. Right, like, that was the frustrating part about watching the Indiana Pacers this year. You know, they'd beat Boston and then they'd go lose to, Charlotte or Brooklyn. All right, it's a frustrating thing. Good teams don't lose games like that. Okay, they just don't. So hopefully the Fever are able to pick up a win tonight. But I say all that to lead into, it doesn't matter what the score is. Doesn't matter if the Fever win or not. What I will say is that people are going to watch no matter what. The WNBA ratings came out, and they released the 10 most viewed games this year. Prior to this season, no game had an average of 1 million viewers since 2008. The Indiana Fever have 8 of the most watched games this year. 8 of the top 10. The 2 games that do not belong to the Indiana Fever belong to teams that played on ABC right after the Fever. So there was some carryover, right? So people would watch Caitlin Clark and then they'd, get up, go to whatever, and their TV would still be rolling. Okay? This is a common occurrence. I think, this boosts ratings all the time. That's why, stations like CBS, NBC, and Fox, that's why they debut new television shows right after the Super Bowl, because there's carryover of people leaving their TVs on and, seeping into that time, and it helps with their ratings. And when I look at this list of the top 10 most viewed games this year in the WNBA, obviously Caitlin Clark really pops. She does. Okay, she's, on 8 out of these top 10 games. And when you think about this, it makes sense that Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston are all-stars, because people are not only seeing Caitlin Clark, but they're also seeing those 2 players, and they're good players. So they've just been exposed more to the viewing audience and the voters more than anybody else has. So it makes sense that the Fever have 3 all-stars. Now, the other thing that pops out on here is that Angel Reese does not drive ratings. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that going 3 for 13 on layups would get people to tune in? Who would have thought that? I don't know. But something that is very much a thing, and we knew this coming into the season, was that Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark is 1,000% a thing. Okay, the top 2 most viewed games this year in the WNBA were on June 16th and June 23rd. The 2 times that the Indiana Fever played against the Chicago Sky. Okay, and then their third meeting is on the list as well at 6th, if I'm doing my math right here. It's impressive. Caitlin Clark is driving an audience, and in that, she is growing the game, and it is benefiting everybody. And you say, Jonathan, how do you know that it's benefiting everybody? Well, it has been reported. It has been reported that the WNBA will be signing a new television deal, which is how leagues make money. If you pay attention to when salary caps go up in the NFL and the NBA and all these different leagues. The salary cap goes up when new TV deals happen. Okay? Like that is what really drives revenue. Okay? That's why, the NBA and the NFL and all these sports were fine when COVID happened because they still had their TV money. Right? That's how these leagues make their money. So the WNBA's new media deal will bring in $200 million a year, which is pretty substantial. Okay, with potential to make an extra $60 million per year, right? Based off of incentives, I'm assuming having to do with ratings and all of those things. So hopefully Caitlin Clark can stay healthy because that's why people are tuning in right now. $200 million a year and potentially all the way up to $260 million a year. That's a lot of coin. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of moolah. It is, especially when you compare it to their current deal. Currently, the WNBA's media deal brings in only $50 million a year. And when you compare that to the, $3 billion deal that the NBA just signed, it's not a lot of money. Compare it to the NFL's TV deals. Geez, it's not a lot of money. So the WNBA, because of Caitlin Clark, is about to really enter a new chapter. They may actually make a profit. They may no longer have to be subsidized by the NBA. They may be able to survive on their own because of Caitlin Clark. $200 million a year. That is at a minimum going to quadruple their current earnings from their current media deal. All because of one woman, Caitlin Clark. And it could potentially, jump up to 5 times the amount if they can meet some of these incentives and make $250 million a year off of this new media deal. It's incredible. It really is. And it speaks to something about the way that people watch and consume TV or sports just in general. When you have an athlete that people like and people are interested in, it doesn't matter what sport they play. It doesn't. People are interested in Caitlin Clark, and people that used to never, including me, that used to never even think, even consider watching the WNBA are now tuning in on a regular basis. It's incredible, and it speaks volumes to the type of player that Caitlin Clark is. And as she continues to as she continues to improve, which I'm going to talk to Tony East about here at 11:20 when he joins the show, as he does every Wednesday. One of the things that I'm going to talk to him about is the improvement of Caitlin Clark. And as she starts to get better, right? And instead of averaging, 17 points a game, when she starts averaging like 25 points a game, like that's only going to bring in more viewership. She is tilting the scales for the WNBA in an extremely positive manner. Okay? And hopefully, people will see this. People that don't like Caitlin Clark. Hopefully the other players in the WNBA will see this and maybe say thank you. Because she is the thing that has entered the league and tilted the scales. It's not Angel Reese, okay? She's not, she hasn't played in one of these most viewed games this year unless she was playing against Caitlin Clark. That is what drives the ratings. Caitlin Clark, not anybody else. So it's impressive. It's fun. I've enjoyed watching her. I hope you've watched her, and I hope you've enjoyed watching her as well. Something else that I truly enjoy watching is the Summer League. I was talking to my boss about this before I came in, and it bridges the gap. It gives me all the things that I want in a basketball game, right? The things that I love about college basketball and the things that I love about the NBA are very much combined when I watch the Summer League. I love and appreciate how hard college basketball players play. Okay, a lot of guys, not every guy, but a lot of these guys, they don't loaf. Okay, they're active, they play defense, they're in the passing lanes, they're working hard. And I really like that aspect of college basketball, even though sometimes when I watch college basketball, the product in and of itself isn't great. And that's why I like watching the NBA. Highly skilled. When guys are left open, they tend to make shots. Guys are more athletic. They're playing above the rim more. They're making the extra pass. It's fun, right? But the effort can dip a little bit because it's a long season. And then I turn on the summer league and I'm like, oh wow, these guys are fighting for their lives. Okay, like this guy was he got drafted 3 years ago. He was the 9th pick, and he knows that if he doesn't perform well in the summer league, then he's gonna have to get a passport at some point and probably head overseas. So because of that, these guys are playing so incredibly hard. But also because they got drafted, they're better than your average college basketball player. And so there's this awesome mix of highly skilled players, highly athletic players, and high intensity and effort. And it's great. It's fun to watch. I took a break from my day yesterday to sit down and watch this Pacer Summer League team because they're fun, they're active, they play defense, and my guy, Jarris Walker, continues to impress me. I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets, wrapping up this first hour by going into just a little bit on this Pacers Summer League team. They're fun. They're fun to watch. I enjoy watching the Summer League, especially Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd looks like the best player in this draft class so far. No, I wonder who said that. I think the guy who hosts the show from 10 to noon on Indy Sports Ticket said that he was the best player in the draft, but I don't know. And if you head over to YouTube and you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Indy Sports Ticket, you can join the chat. They're talking right now about Bronny James. And they're like, is he the worst player in the Summer League? And I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. I think Bronny James looks like a guy who was selected 55th overall in the NBA draft. It looks like a guy who needs to spend some time in the G League. You know, I think that's what he looks like. But here's the thing. Alex Sarr has to just thank to thank the Lord every morning. He does, because he's terrible. I mean, he's awful. So while people are very focused on Bronny James and the struggles that he has had so far in the Summer League, no one is paying attention to this guy, Alex Sarr, the guy from France, the number 2 overall pick who was drafted by the Washington Wizards. And I feel bad for him because he was drafted by the Washington Wizards, and that just has to be one of the worst teams to get drafted by. Alex Sarr, yesterday he played 30 minutes and scored 0 points. He was 0 of 15 shooting, and he missed 2 free throws. The guy's terrible. He's awful. Okay, he looks incredibly bad right now. This number 2 overall pick, this guy who should be really good, looks awful. You know, but that's what happens sometimes. Okay, like Trae Young, I remember he struggled in the Summer League, and that happens sometimes, right? And then he got to the actual NBA, and he's a good player now. So, you know, the Summer League isn't everything, but it does provide a sneak peek into what players can be, and that's part of why I watch. I like being informed. I like being able to talk about the rookies and what they can and can't do, and even some of the second-year guys like Jarris Walker. So the Pacers Summer League team played against the Suns yesterday, and they won 98-94. And the more I watch Jarris Walker, the more I have to try to contain myself because the dude can play. I really like Jarris Walker. And through these 3 Summer League games, he continues to show why he was a lottery pick last year. Okay, he scored 19 points on 5 of 7 shooting yesterday. He hit 4 of his 5 3-point attempts, and he had 4 rebounds and 5 assists while playing outstanding defense. The kid, and I can call him a kid because he's younger than me, the kid continues to contribute to the game in multiple ways. I like his size. I like his length. I like his activity, right? On both ends of the floor. The dude's good. Okay, he's awesome. He checks a lot of the boxes when it comes to the Pacers' needs. Okay, he does. Right, he's a big wing defender that can defend guys like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, right? They didn't have anyone who could do that this last year, and that's part of why the Boston Celtics swept them. Okay, they would put Aaron Nesmith on Jason Tatum because Jason Tatum is the best player for the Boston Celtics. And look, Aaron Nesmith, I thought he did a good job defending Jason Tatum in those Eastern Conference Finals. But Pacers didn't have anyone left to defend Jaylen Brown. And that is what they need. They need a second guy on the floor who can defend some of these bigger wings. And Jarris Walker, so far through the Summer League, looks like he can be that guy. And here's the thing. This is the thing that I've noticed. When people talk about Caitlin Clark, it's very obvious to tell who likes her and who doesn't. The people that like her talk about the points and the assists and the rebounds and how she's impacting the game and how she's leading to more people watching the WNBA. And the people that don't like her are like, oh, well, she turns the ball over too much. Turns the ball over way too much, right? That's kind of their defense of why they don't like Caitlin Clark. That is the thing that they point to. It's like, oh, the turnovers. It's like, okay, she's young. She's a rookie. She's playing point guard. Like she's going to turn the basketball over. Okay, it's fine. It's something that she will eventually work out of her game. Now, when it comes to Jarris Walker, if you watch these summer league games, he has had an issue turning the basketball over. He turned the ball over 8 times yesterday, which is an issue. Okay, like that is a lot of turnovers. But here's the thing that we have to remember: in these summer league games, guys are playing roles that they won't play in at the actual NBA level. When Jarris Walker gets minutes in the Pacers rotation this year, probably in the playoffs, he is going to play, probably small forward, and he's not going to handle the basketball that much because Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are going to be on the floor with him. And those two guys are going to handle the basketball and make 90% of the decisions for the Pacers. Okay? He is. When it comes to Jarris Walker, like he's going to catch and shoot, catch and attack closeouts, and if those aren't options, he will keep the ball moving. Okay? Something relatively similar to what Ben Shepherd does, right? Except, with a little bit more action going towards the basket. That's what he's going to do. And so when you look at the 8 turnovers from yesterday's game, ignore them, okay? Because he's not going to have the ball that much when he plays for the Pacers at the NBA level. He just isn't. Okay, they're going to ask him to play defense and score, 8 to 12 points a game. That's what he's going to do. That's what Jarris Walker's role is going to be for the Pacers this next season. He looks good. He's a good player. And I think he will break the Pacers' 8-man rotation and get legitimate playoff minutes for the Pacers this upcoming season. Now, I also want to talk about 35th overall pick Johnny Furphy. He's making an impression, man. He is making an impression. He scored 18 points yesterday on 6 of 17 shooting, which isn't great, but he was 4 of 11 from 3. That's like in the high 30%. Like that's an impressive thing. He can shoot it. He's scrappy. I like the way that he plays. He grabbed 8 rebounds, which is insane for a guy who's 6'7" and like 150 pounds. Getting in there, putting his body on the line, rebounding the ball. Reminds me a lot of Ben Shepherd, just tall dude who can shoot it and competes on defense. It's great. He had 2 steals and a block as well. I like him. I don't think he carves out a role for the Pacers this year, just because the Pacers have a lot of good players, and that's fine. Like he's a second-round pick, okay? But at some point, he's going to carve out a role for himself in the NBA. Hopefully, it's for the Pacers. It's going to be similar, to Ben Shepherd, defend, rebound, and hit open threes. And if you're not open for 3, let's keep the ball moving. Okay, I've been impressed with Johnny Furphy so far, and I think he fits in very well to what the Indiana Pacers want to do. And, the other thing about the Pacers that really jumps off the page to me is they all seem likable, right? Like there's a real camaraderie, on the bench and in the games even. And I think that's why they play so well together. And being likable is an important skill. Okay, you can get fired if you're not likable. Like eventually, people get tired of your crap and they're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with you anymore. We'll see you later. Okay? And you can get hired just for being likable. Like for me, okay, my boss now called me and said, hey, Jonathan, we have an opening. Do you want it? I promise you that if my boss did not like me, then I would not have gotten that call. Okay, being likable is important because people want to work with people and be around people that they like. Okay, no one goes around looking for friends that they don't like. It doesn't happen. Okay, no one wants to go work for the meanest boss. Okay, people want to work for a boss that they like. And the bosses of the world want people that work for them, they want to like them because it just makes everybody happier. It's not a complicated thing. Okay, it's something that children can understand. Okay, people that are likable stick around longer. And if you aren't likable, then you better be awesome at your job or you better just have the best personality, okay? And when I think about this idea of not being likable but being great at your job, I think about Draymond Green. Okay, Draymond Green is one of one. There aren't very many 6'7" NBA players that can run an offense and defend the 1 through the 5 on the defensive end of the floor like Draymond Green can. Because of that and his relationship with Stephen Curry, the Warriors have put up with all of the crap that he has put them through over the years. Okay, they put up with him kicking players in the playoffs, right? Like he kicked Steven Adams, he kicked LeBron James, right? All in the same playoff run. They put up with Draymond Green punching his teammate Jordan Poole in the face. In fact, he's so good at his job, they got rid of Jordan Poole. Okay, they put up with him choking Rudy Gobert this year and being suspended indefinitely. When you are great at your job, you can get away with not being liked. Now, if you're not great at what you do and you're very average and people don't like you, then they will replace you. With that being said, Patrick Beverley has signed a new contract overseas. Hallelujah. I have some appreciation for Patrick Beverley. He plays hard. He defends consistently at a high level. But look, his antics started to wear on me, and they started to wear on the rest of the league too. And that is why he's going overseas. It's almost like if you take the ball and you throw it at a fan 5 feet away from you as hard as you can, not once, but twice, it's almost like that's not very likable. And it's almost like people don't want to be around people like that. Antics and things like that in this annoying podcast that he does that's not very good. Things like that are why he's going overseas because Patrick Beverley is still good enough to play in the NBA. He is. But NBA people don't like him and they don't like his antics. And when I watch the Pacers, it is evident that everybody on that roster is liked, and it's evident that everyone on that roster likes each other. Okay, like there is real camaraderie there. When we look at the New York Knicks, playing with people that you like is very valuable. That's why that's part of why Jalen Brunson took a pay cut. It's part of why Mikal Bridges has talked about taking a pay cut because they want to play with each other. They want to play with all the other Villanova guys because they like them. Okay, Jalen Brunson wouldn't have pushed for the Knicks to go out and sign Mikal Bridges unless he liked him. Okay? That's just how things work. It is important to be likable. Because if you aren't, you'll miss out on opportunities. And we're seeing that with Patrick Beverley, right? And once again, if you're not likable, you better be awesome at your job, right? Because if you're awesome at your job, you can kick people, you can choke people, you can be suspended indefinitely, and it doesn't really matter because Draymond Green, the man himself, is great at what he does. Coming up here in about 25-ish minutes, Tony East of Locked On Pacers is going to join me. Can't wait to have him on the air. Always a blast when he joins the show. So I talked a little bit about the home run derby yesterday, and I've got some audio from it that I have to play. I have to play it. I have to. I saw this, and it'll leave you speechless. So that's coming up here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Hour number 2 of the real Jonathan Smith Show is coming your way right now. My guy, Tony East of Locked On Pacers, is about to join me here in about 20 minutes. We're going to get into the Pacers. Obviously, we're going to get into the Indiana Fever. You know, he covers them as well, and he does an excellent job of it. And so yesterday, my wife was out of town, who I love dearly. And because she was gone, though, the new college football game came out, and I just, it's all I did. It wasn't healthy, but I had a good time. So I don't know. It was good for my mental health. There you go. Let's frame it that way. And so sitting down, and I played a lot, too much. And between, games and things, I would get on Twitter and, just kind of scroll whatever during the loading screens. And, I talked yesterday about how I didn't know that the home run derby happened on Monday night and how terrible of a job Major League Baseball does at marketing things. And so I'm scrolling through and I want to see highlights from the home run derby. So I search home run derby, and there's Bobby Witt Jr. home runs popping up and Teoscar Hernandez winning the whole thing and all of that. But those were not the things that popped up first. The first thing that popped up was the Ingrid Aldress national anthem. And it's terrible. This is one of the worst things I have ever heard in my life. And so if you're driving and you're listening and you have kids in the car, I'd turn me off for a minute and 45 seconds. Because if they hear this, they will wake up. If you have a baby and they hear this, they will scream. They will. There's no way around it. If you haven't heard this horrendous edition of the national anthem, here it is for you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed by the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And then everyone applauds. That was Ingrid Aldress singing the national anthem before the home run derby. And that has to be the worst edition ever. Seriously, that has to be the worst singing of the national anthem ever. Usually, whenever I watch these amazingly talented people, by the way, that artist has been nominated for 4 Grammys. Usually, I listen to these people sing the national anthem. I'm like, wow, they are so talented. And there's no way that I could ever do that. But that, I could do that. I could undoubtedly sing the national anthem just like she did. There's no doubt in my mind. That is the worst rendition of the national anthem that we've ever heard. Okay? It nothing else even rivals it. When I heard it, I was like, that is so much worse when Fergie sang the national anthem at the NBA All-Star game 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. It's terrible. It's horrendous. And yeah, oh my gosh, is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And it's not even close. Okay. So I won't play it again, but I saw it and I played it just kind of for this point that I'm about to make of that was the highlight from the home run derby. Like what? That is how people learned that the home run derby happened. How does Major League Baseball allow for this to happen? How does Major League Baseball allow a drunk person, because she came out afterwards and said, hey, I'm sorry, I was drunk, I'm checking myself into rehab today. She released that today, I believe. And how does Major League Baseball even allow that to happen? Like this would never happen at an NFL game. It wouldn't. There's no way that it would. And that is why baseball continues to be to be clowned. That's why baseball is, dropping in popularity, right? Because they don't market very well. And when stuff like this, when they do go viral and people do pay attention to baseball, it's for stuff like this. Okay? Like my feed should have been littered with home runs Monday night and throughout these past couple days. But no, instead, it's that. Baseball, man, just the worst marketing people in the world, no doubt about it. And I want to transition now to the worst general manager in the world in Chris Ballard. Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, has officially requested a trade. And the Indianapolis Colts should undoubtedly make a trade for him. Okay, he has made this trade request, Brandon Aiyuk has, because he wants to get paid. My man wants to make some money. He's sitting back. He's like, Jalen Waddle just signed a deal for $30 million a year. Give me some of that action, please. That's what he wants. And, the Colts faithful, the Ballard mob continue and have for, the past 7 years, continue to brag about how much cap space they have. And, here's the thing. Cap space is there, like, to be used. Like, that's money that should be spent. Okay, every, dollar you are below, the maximum amount that you're allowed to spend, that tells me how little you want to win. Okay, teams that want to win do not have leftover cap space. They don't. Okay, they figure out, the cap tricks. Teams hire salary cap guys for the sole purpose of figuring out the tricks. It's disappointing, right? And this guy, Brandon Aiyuk, is now available, and the evidence is there as to why the Indianapolis Colts should draft Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, when young quarterbacks are given proven weapons, they improve. We have seen it time and time again, especially in recent history. Jalen Hurts was not very good. And then all of a sudden, the Philadelphia Eagles were like, hey, let's go get A.J. Brown. And all of a sudden, the Eagles were good. And all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts was like a potential MVP candidate. It's amazing what happens with young quarterbacks when you pair them with elite top-end talent at the wide receiver position. Tua, okay, he saw the same leap when Tyreek Hill showed up. Josh Allen had 2 horrendous years in Buffalo. He was terrible. And all of a sudden, the Bills make a trade for Stephon Diggs. And all of a sudden, Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL. It's crazy how that works. And what's even crazier is that Chris Ballard and this Colts front office has seen this happen with these different young quarterbacks, and they're content to sit on their hands and be like, hey, we have Michael Pittman Jr. Ooh. You need something more than that. Let's give Anthony Richardson a proven commodity at receiver, because as of right now, this Colts wide receiver room screams of average. Okay, Michael Pittman Jr. is a number 2 wide receiver. He's not a number 1. He's not. Brandon Aiyuk is capable of being a number 1 wide receiver in an offense. I have no doubt about it. None whatsoever. Josh Downs, great in the slot. Okay, love him in the slot. Thought he had a good year last year as a rookie, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Okay, he's not big enough. He can't play outside. Like, he has to play in the slot, right? Which is great, and you need players like that. But more importantly, you need a number 1 wide receiver, and Brandon Aiyuk can be that. I'm excited about Adonai Mitchell. I think he's going to be a good player. You're probably excited about Adonai Mitchell. Okay, and even though I think he's going to be a good player, no one knows yet. Adonai Mitchell is unproven. Sure, he had a good rookie training camp or mini camp or whatever that was that happened in June with the training camp quickly approaching. Like come on now. Like who cares about that? Like, let's go get a proven commodity, because proven commodities are better than unknown commodities. Let me ask you a question. If somebody was like, hey, I have the winning lottery ticket. You have one you have not scratched off yet. Would you like to trade? You would say yes immediately, because you know what that ticket is, right? And that is the thing with Brandon Aiyuk. I know for a fact that Brandon Aiyuk can perform at an elite level in the NFL. I don't know if Adonai Mitchell can. He could be the next great wide receiver, or he could be a bust. No one knows. And given Chris Ballard's track record with his inability to draft well, I would lean towards him being a bust. So let's go out. Let's trade a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, right? Because that's just another lottery ticket. You don't know what you're going to get in the draft. At some point, Chris Ballard has got to realize that he's just not good at drafting players. Okay, the most important thing that anyone can know is who they are. It is important to know what you're good at and what you're bad at. If squirrels thought that they were good hunters, they would be extinct. Okay, because they would get killed by things that can actually hunt. Squirrels, however, know that they're great gatherers. So that's what they do. They climb up, the peach tree in your backyard, and they steal peaches. Okay, that's what they do, because they know that that's what they're good at. Chris Ballard has to realize at some point that he's just not good at drafting players. So he has to figure out another way to do the job, which is acquiring talent. He has made it crystal clear that he does not like signing players in free agency. I don't understand it, but hey, whatever. He's made it clear that that just isn't how he wants to operate. So perhaps instead of spending draft picks on players that turn out to be average or worse, perhaps he should start trading those draft picks away for legitimate players that everyone knows can play. Let's be honest. If the Colts go 7-9 this year and they have the 11th pick in the NFL draft, what are the chances that Chris Ballard drafts a player better than Brandon Aiyuk? I would argue not very high, in part because Chris Ballard just hasn't done a good job of drafting players, and that's fine. You can still win in the NFL if you don't draft well. Just look at the Los Angeles Rams. The reason why they won a Super Bowl is because they traded away a whole bunch of first-round picks for really good players. Okay? So you don't have to be great at drafting to win in the NFL. You don't. And so for Chris Ballard, he's not good at it, so let's make some trades. Let's wheel and deal just a little bit. Okay? The chances of him drafting somebody at 11 next year better than Brandon Aiyuk is unlikely, partially because Chris Ballard is not very good at drafting players, but also because Brandon Aiyuk's awesome, because he's a great player. If whoever gets drafted at any spot next year is as good as or better than Brandon Aiyuk, they will make a lot of money for a long time in the NFL. Okay? Because Brandon Aiyuk is a great player. That is a player worthy of trading a first-round pick for. Okay? Brandon Aiyuk would solve a lot of the issues that the Colts have. He would provide explosiveness, something that the Colts have been lacking since Chris Ballard showed up 8 years ago, excuse me. Brandon Aiyuk would also extend the depth at receiver because let's be honest, the Colts, they're slim there. We like Michael Pittman Jr. We don't love him. We like Josh Downs. We think Adonai Mitchell is going to be good. And Alec Pierce appears to be a bust. So Brandon Aiyuk would provide depth and he would provide explosiveness. Two things that the Colts need in that wide receiver room. That is what they need more than anything else on this offense. Okay, someone who provides explosiveness, depth, and most importantly, someone who can elevate the play of Anthony Richardson. Chris Ballard, I know you're listening, and I'm sorry that I said some mean things. But just do everyone a favor. Do yourself a favor. Right? Like he's a survivor, right? Like he's someone who just kind of, wants to hang around. It's hard to screw up a first-round pick if you don't have one. So let's get rid of that thing and go get Brandon Aiyuk. Okay? All right? I know you're listening, Chris. And I think he knows that whoever he drafts in the first round next year will likely not be as good as Brandon Aiyuk. And Brandon Aiyuk is a receiver who can step in. He can step into this Colts offense. He's another weapon for Shane Steichen, who I'm going to talk about at some point today, I hope. And, he's a guy who can elevate Anthony Richardson's game, and that is what they need. That is what they need. Speaking of elevating people's games, Jarris Walker's gotten better. Caitlin Clark is making her teammates better, elevating their games. Tony East of Locked On Pacers, he's also a beat writer for the Indiana Fever. He joins me here in about 3 to 4 minutes to talk about Caitlin Clark, the Fever, and the Pacers Summer League team.
Get to Hinkle Fieldhouse this basketball season to cheer on your Butler Bulldogs. Tickets are on sale now. Act now. Get your order in by August 1st to have the best chance at premium seats inside historic Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
Today, my new dad threw a barbecue.
I burnt everything.
And then we played catch.
I broke Mr. Lewis's window. And then, somehow, my hand. My hand!
And then my dad even let me drive his car.
The hospital's on the right! It was a rough day.
It was a great day.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, and it is 11:20 on a Wednesday. And if you listen on Wednesdays, then you know what that means. Tony East of Locked On Pacers, he also writes and covers the Indiana Fever as well. He joins me. Tony, what's going on, man?
Not a lot. Back from Vegas, ready to talk about the moves. Last Fever game for a while tonight.
I know, and that's where I want to start, man. You're setting me up beautifully. It's great. So the Fever, they're coming off of a pretty tough 5-game stretch, right, where they played the Aces, the Liberty, the Mystic, the Lynx, and the Mercury, and they went 3-2. And going into the stretch, I was like, if they can go 2-3, 1-4, if they can just beat the Mystic, that'd be great. But instead, they go 3-2. I think it speaks to how much better they have gotten. At the start of the year, would you have predicted them to play that well in that stretch?
No. I mean, early in the year, there were a lot of things going wrong for them, like schedule-wise. But the thing about it that I said with you is, like, it wasn't just that they played a lot of games. They played a lot of hard teams, and they got steamrolled by New York in a lot of those games, right? Like, they lost by 30, I think, twice to them early in the season. Like, I thought that was just going to be a team that they just never beat. And, they I think when even we were talking when they were playing a little better in the middle of June, I said, oh, no, they don't have a signature win yet, right? This Fever team, they're playing better, clearly, but they still haven't beat anybody awesome. Well, now they have. That New York win was obviously huge, shows that Lynx win, and they're just playing so much better that they can beat these teams that are actually legitimately talented. And to do it in 3 out of 4 games, I mean, the Mercury are a fine team, I guess is the best way to describe them, but to beat Phoenix and New York at home and then go on the road and beat a very good Minnesota team, won the Commissioner's Cup a month ago. Like, now they have signature wins. They're playing well against, high quality opponents. Schedule be danged, like they can beat good teams. And so it's very peculiar that in the middle of the stretch, they just dropped the game at home to the worst team in the W in Washington. And yet they're finally playing well. They're clicking. Most of their stars are playing well at the same time. Like, they can beat anybody now. And that's not a thing that was the case early in the season. So it says a lot about their growth that this is the reality that they're in and that they've done well in this stretch. And they play Dallas tonight, who stinks. But given how this stretch just went, the fact that they lost to Washington, maybe they lose that game and the conversations become weird again. But they're playing really well right now in a very impressive stretch.
They really are. It's fun to watch too. Like, it's good basketball, which is my favorite kind of basketball. And, early in the year, Christie's sides took a lot of heat. I didn't understand it. I thought that the Fever were just young. Like, they've got a rookie point guard who's getting doubled everywhere. And like, it's hard to win when that's the case. And Caitlin was having to adjust. But as the year has gone on, I think Christy Sides has done a good job of coaching this team. She's figured out a way to get this young team to play defense. So, like, I'm a fan. I think she's doing a good job. How would you assess the job that Christy Sides has done so far this year?
Yeah, I told you, like, my Sides assessment on the season was like, I didn't expect it to be that much better than this early, just given their schedule. But some of their losses in particular were weird, and the fact that they hadn't defended well, considering she was hired to be a defensive coach, was certainly strange. But now they are losing in ways that make sense. They still have the same problem where if they give up more than 85 points, they just lose. But they're defending better. Their young players have clearly made strides. Their offensive style with transition play is it just makes more sense, looks a lot better, right? Like a lot of that stuff has improved, and she certainly found a system that clicks, and that's kind of what was needed on a young team, right? Like she had to be somebody who could help a team like this get better, and has done a very good job doing so. I think the way she uses Clark and the minutes she uses Clark has changed. She's figured out combinations rotationally that actually work and make sense. So yeah, I think she's solved a lot of problems, done a lot better since that early start. I think their schedule is just so brutal. It didn't help at all.
I completely agree. Joined by Tony East of Locked On Pacers, who also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. And you mentioned how some of these young players for the Fever have made some strides. And I really feel like over the last month, Caitlin Clark has really kind of turned a corner. Like the assist numbers are up. She's starting to score a little bit more. What do you think has changed for her for us to see these improvements?
Yeah, I kind of view the season kind of piecemeal for the Fever because a lot of stuff, even relating to other players like Caitlin, and I'll answer the Caitlin question by telling a kind of different story, kind of relates to how Aaliyah Boston is playing, right? When the Fever stunk early in the season, Aaliyah was not playing well. I even asked her, like, how do you think you've been playing? She said bad. And then I don't know the exact game number, 8, 9, 7, in that range. She had her best game of the season. And then the next game, she had her best game of the season again. And then again. And like all of a sudden she looked great and was getting double doubles with rebounds all the time. And her defense was better. And that's when the Fever season started to turn in general. And then the third point, and related to your Clark point to me, is she and Clark's 2-player games, their pick and rolls, their just connections in general with each other. When that started to hum, which I would say like mid-June-ish is when that really became like, man, if those two are out there together, the Fever can hang with anybody. That is when Clark's numbers went up because now she had a really easy target for a lot of assists every game. Like sometimes I feel like her assist numbers are just like, does her teammates make some threes? But with Boston's not a three-point shooter, right? She's doing stuff in the lane. She's doing stuff elbows it in, and she's very good at it. So I think a big part of the reason her assist numbers have gone up and why Clark's look better running the offense, both as the scorer and the passer, is that kind of stuff, right? Her and Boston look really good together. That pairing has developed into, of course, it's going to be the Fever. That's going to be the Fever for years. But that pairing has been massive for so long. And so now that Boston's playing well and those two are playing well off of each other, that's helped a lot. And then they went back to Katie Lou Samuelson in the starting 5. Katie Lou's a good shooter. That made a lot of sense. That's helped too. So yeah, Clark's obviously gotten better, right? She's figured out the W game, where the bigger players are going to defend her from, how much farther she needs to drag her defender away from screens to open up passing angles, all sorts of important stuff. But I think as Aaliyah Boston has gotten better and made that connection more natural, that has been a big part of opening up her assist game with the bigs and the rest of the team. And I think that is kind of where the season compartmentalized in a way that really helped Caitlin be the best version of herself.
Do the turnovers that Caitlin Clark commits, do they bother you at all?
Yes and no. I think people keep saying this. They keep saying, "Oh, it's on her teammates." I'm like, no, it's not. Like at some point, if her teammates can't catch her passes, she's got to not throw that pass. Yeah. So it's obviously some of both. Like they should be catching more of them. But to me, like the way she plays the passes she throws, the aggression in which she's trying to create shots, there's going to be 4 probably every game, 4 or 5 that you just live with because you want her to be playing like that, right? And you want the defense to be defending in a way where they expect those passes because it opens up other stuff. So I think I don't know the perfect number. I made that up in my head, but 4-ish, 5-ish, where you're like, okay, whatever. There's always some every game where I'm like, what was the hope of that pass? Even in the best case scenario, I get that it was creative and somebody might have been open, but like, are you really creating a basket or are you just trying to throw it up the field and keep other people involved? So it's so much like her style to throw those passes. So you almost don't want to take it away from her in a way, but that is obviously the biggest knock. There was that viral tweet this week about how she already has the turnover record and it's been like 25 games, but she also has this rookie assist record already. So I think it's just kind of baked into her game. And there's a few that, of course, turnovers are bad. Like if she could have 0, that'd be awesome. But there's a few every game you'd like to take away. But I think there's just going to be a pretty high number, honestly, that is just naturally a part of her game for maybe her whole career. It's just how she passes.
It is, and my thing is, LeBron James is the all-time leader in turnovers, and no one really seems to care. So that's how I feel about it. Joined by Tony East of Locked On Pacers and beat writer for the Indiana Fever. Last thing on the Fever here. So Diana Taurasi has had some injury issues here lately. I know she came back and played in Their most recent game, didn't play as many minutes, didn't play very well. If she can't play in the Olympics, which seems more and more unlikely in terms of her missing the Olympics, to be clear, do you think Caitlin Clark should replace her?
Yeah, there's a way that the Olympic replacing works, like with points and stuff like that. I don't know exactly how it works, because I remember learning about this with 3-on-3. So, I mean, yeah, Clark's obviously a natural candidate. She's one of the 15, 20 best American women's players. And there's a lot of banged up players on that team. Like Nafisha Collier's hurt right now. Brianna Stewart just missed a game, albeit for rest. BG was missing games before that game that DT also returned. Like, they were both injured for Phoenix. So there's a lot of banged up players on the team. So there's like a couple ways that someone could, in theory, miss time. And yeah, Caitlin would be among the players I think considered. Betnijah Laney would have been one, but she also just got injured and she's out 4 to 6 weeks for New York, right? So like there's another route that could potentially help Caitlin be on this team. But I think there's like a system on how they decide who the replacements are. I learned about this through 3-on-3, and that's how it became obvious that Dearica Hamby was going to be the replacement for some injured players on that team. So I don't know who, in theory, the winner is. If I could just speak like objectively and just pick someone who's not on the team, I think the only two replacements that make any sense in terms of talent are Caitlin and Arike Ogunbowale of the Dallas Wings, who the Fever will see tonight. Those are probably the two best players not on the team. Arike said, and this is never true, like players always are stretching the truth when they say this, but she said she pulled herself out of the mix for Team USA when she found out she didn't have a good chance of making it, which is dumb. But she's probably the best. She was to me the best player who was not on the team. Ryan Howard, obviously very good too. So I think Caitlin and Arike would be the two in most consideration, and those three in some order would be the three that are strongest considered if there is a dropout.
Okay, I didn't know that there was a system. See, that's why you have you on, man.
Yeah, I didn't know this either.
You're so
I'm
smart.
not explaining it very well, but it's like based on past USA experiences within the last couple of years, which Caitlin has some of, and like practices, and I don't remember exactly how it is. I have to look it up. But for 3-on-3, there was a point system that made it like there were only like 2 or 3 players that couldn't even be, and one of them was Katie Lou Samuelson from the Fever. I had no idea about this kind of stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to move now into your time in Vegas. You were there watching the Pacers in the Summer League. I like Jarris Walker. I think he's going to be really good. The more I watch, the more excited I get. What are your thoughts on him so far from what we've seen? And to be fair, like only 3 games in the Summer League.
Yeah, every thought in Summer League has to start with it's Summer League. Let's be clear what we're talking about.
Yeah,
these aren't real games, and these aren't the roles that a lot of these players are going to play in the NBA, right? And that is one of the biggest takeaways from this Pacers team is they have like no shot creators at all. Quentin Jackson and Tristan Newton are really their only kind of that kind of player, and Jackson's not even a creator for others. So I say all that to say Jarris has been asked to kind of do that, right? He's been all like lead guard adjacent in his role for this team, which is really interesting. He's had like 3 or 4 assists every game. And the thing that stood out about him there, for anyone who's watched a single game, is he's just shooting threes like crazy, and like not in a bad way. He's shooting almost 50% on threes, which is not something I would necessarily expect from him in his career. But he is getting them up, and he's had to create a lot of them for himself, and he's still making them like that. One of the stats that does translate from Summer League in previous data studies is 3-point attempt rate. And Jarris is getting them up. That's good, right? If he's going to be playing for the Pacers, shooting well is going to matter. And he's doing a great job with that. The thing that Rick Carlisle says is going to matter is physicality, right? Battling with big dudes and using his body and his size to create advantages. And I think that's kind of come and gone. You saw it at times in that first game, and I think you saw it at times yesterday. He was banging with David Roddy, Big Body Roddy, as he's referred to in the NBA. Like, that was good. In the second game, that wasn't happening as much. So a mixed bag there. His defense has been hit and miss. Like in the first quarter against the Suns last night, I think was the worst defensive quarter he's had all Summer League, but had some better moments later in that game. So I think in general, it's been a positive Summer League because the offense and the play finishing has been really good in a way that's meaningful for if he's going to play and he's going to be able to score. That's good. He's been passing well enough, and I think that's a key swing skill for him offensively on this Pacers team. But still some moments with the physicality in the defense where if you're the Pacers, you'd like to see a little more. You'd like to see him, do it for 40 minutes and look consistent doing so. But all in all, definitely a positive Summer League. And the key part for everybody like him, right? Anyone back for a second Summer League, especially first round lottery pick, whatever, is that he just looks better than other players on the floor. And he certainly does, right? He's been the best Pacer in 2 out of the 3 games, and even for stretches in that third game where Furphy was better than him. So I would say a good summer league, although some of the stuff he needs to be playing well at, he has not done perfectly every game, and I think that matters. We'll see if he plays anymore.
Yeah, I'm hoping he does. Joined by Tony East of Locked On Pacers. I'm so glad that you brought up the role thing because, whenever my listeners comment on my show, they're like, well, Jarris Walker had, 8 turnovers yesterday.
Yeah, that's been bad.
which is terrible. But at the same time, like I have to remind people that if he plays for the Pacers, Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton are going to be making the majority of the choices, especially, on offense. So the question is, can Walker defend? And is he willing to take, and can he make threes? Because that's just an important part of playing for the Pacers. And I think, he's done that. And it's nice knowing that he can handle the ball. And if he needs to get a shot when there's, 4 seconds left on the shot clock, he's very capable of doing that. So I like what I've seen from him. You mentioned Furphy, and I watched him play against the Nets, and he looked uncomfortable. But, man, since that first game, he's been just awesome. I love his game. What have your thoughts been on him so far?
I think you nailed it with the game-to-game assessment, because that's what I asked about after the second game, because the stat that mattered to me, or at least was the most obvious watching those 2 performances back-to-back, was what he took in the first game, 2 2-point shots. He took 11 threes and 2 twos. In the second game, I think it was 7 and 7. And then last night he took 6 twos. And I only bring that up to say, he's finding ways to not just be a shooter, right? And that's what's made him more effective, both as a shooter and inside the arc, where in the first game, I think a lot of that uncomfort was he was just settling for threes and sometimes even rushing those shots. And so he's already gotten pretty good at knowing, oh, this guy's closing out hard. I can put it on the floor once and get into the rim. Or oh, I have space over here. I can use this space to get a better shot for my team, and has looked a lot better. Again, in their second game, I thought he was their best player. Last night, I think Jarris was, and then Furphy was second, but they both played pretty well. And I think that's what's kind of changed his fortune to me, is some level of aggressiveness in terms of attacking the rim. He had a dunk, 2 dunks in the last game they played. He had a dunk in the game before, which is nothing in terms of just it's one play, but it's a good thing in terms of him getting to the rim and being open enough at the rim to be able to dunk at his size. I think that's good. So defensively, I think his team defense is pretty good, but certainly going to have to be stronger and gain some weight to bang with some of these guys in the pros. So okay, it's how to say his defense out there so far, but his rebounding's good, his hands are good, he's not a turnover guy. And again, once he figured out that, how he can use his 3 ball to keep going into the lane and make plays there, he looked pretty good. And I don't know if he's going to be able to play much at all for the Pacers this year, just given how much depth they actually have. But certainly you'd rather see him be good than bad in Summer League. And he looked pretty good. He's found ways to be a shooter type, and I think that's what they're going to hope he can be when he does have to play for them at some point.
I love the way he plays off the ball. He cuts so well. Yeah. You mentioned the dunks, and that comes from him being willing to cut and knowing where to cut, and it's great. It's an important skill to have because there's only one ball on the floor. Have any other Pacers players popped out to you in a good way? You mentioned Jackson, the point guard. He drives me crazy every time he gets the ball. I want him to get rid of it. I don't like when he has it. But have any other players for the Pacers popped out for you and just in a good way where you're like, oh, we've seen good things from so-and-so?
Yeah, I think there's only one player who's exceeded expectations every game, and that's Enrique Freeman. Enrique Freeman's been a delight to watch out there. They picked him 50th overall, and I have no idea what to make of the MAC. He played at Akron and what that means for a path to the NBA, and he didn't shoot threes until his 5th season there, and he was a walk-on. Who is this guy? Well, man, is this dude hustling hard every play? And oh my gosh, he's made a 3 2 games in a row, and he makes baskets around. I think he made 9 shots in a row across 2 games, and now they're starting him at the 4 because he's got this huge 7'2" wingspan, even though he's 6'8" or so. He's been really fun because his effort's there, his size is there to get boards, his defense is good enough. They've closed 2 games in a row with him at center over Oscar Tshiebwe. He's been really good, especially compared to expectations of a player like that. Yeah, hustle's good, and you'd like to see it from Summer League for everybody, but he's been good. He's made shots, he's defended well enough, he runs the floor well in transition. So I think Enrique Freeman's been the guy that, especially with people that you don't necessarily have expectations for 2nd round picks. He's been maybe their 3rd best player in these games. and certainly the only guy who every game has exceeded expectations, and maybe his expectations should be higher now because he's playing well. He looks pretty good.
He does. I remember when they drafted him, I was like, oh, that'll be fun, but didn't really expect anything of it. And you're right. He's played really well. Last question for you, Tony, and I will let you go. Did you only watch the Pacers when you were in Vegas, or did you have time to watch other teams play?
Oh, I watch other teams. I just live at the gyms.
Okay. Who were the two non-Pacers that you watched? Give me one guy where you're like, wow, this guy's really good. And then give me a guy where you're like, wow, this guy's not as good as everybody thought he was going to be.
Ooh, interesting. Well, I got to watch a little Stephon Castle, and I was not as high on him as a lot of people were in the draft, but he looked really great before he got hurt out here. He looks really poised and mature already as a guard. I watched. I was at the beginning of Bronny versus the Rockets, and Reed Shepherd looked awesome. I had to ditch that game to go watch the Pacers, but he looked awesome. And then he played another game, and he looked awesome again. So Reed Shepherd has probably been the star of Summer League. Like if you've had to pick MVP right now, it's probably him. And then I went to Wizards Hawks, which was number 1 versus number 2 pick, right? So that was Sarr versus Ricochet, and Sarr played really well when I was there. He had a good game. He had some nice tight angle passes. He made some threes. Like he looked like a beast. They were feeding him the ball, and he made plays. And then last night I was at home, so this doesn't really count for your question. But I watched the Wizards last night, and Alex Sarr was 0 for 16 from the field.
Yeah.
He missed both of his free throws. He had 0 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and a bunch of turnovers. That is very disappointing for him. So I guess that would be one answer. Although when I actually watched him myself, he was pretty good. I can't remember anyone being like, oh, man, this guy – oh, Johnny Davis wasn't very good. He's a lottery pick in year 3. He's just like he's out of time. He's got to be better. I can't remember anyone being like so bad that I wanted to be good or anything like that. I saw Modest Gonzalez. He was pretty good. His athleticism was crazy for a guy his age. So no one was awful except for that Sarr performance. But I think Shepherd and Castle have been the two guys that I was like, oh, man, these guys are great already.
Okay. Yeah, I talked about Sarr and his performance last night earlier. And I was like, he needs to thank the Lord that Bronny James isn't playing very well. Like, seriously, because that's who everyone's talking about. And meanwhile, Alex Sarr plays terrible yesterday, and no one's talking about it.
Well, he needs to thank the Lord that he played good in his first game, too, because that means people can at least, like, kind of give him a pass and just say, okay, it was just a bad game. Because, I mean, what's the shot number, if you're a teammate of his, where you're just like, dude, stop, like over 16 is probably well over that number. I don't know what the exact number is, but that's an atrocious game.
I think his summer league teammates, I think the number's probably around like 12 or 13. But when he plays with the Wizards and he's playing with Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, he may get like 6 shots a game. That might be it.
Well, Bub Carrington, the Wizards' other lottery pick, went 14. He was really good the game I saw too, and he was good again, even with Sarr sneaking it up. So I think he went to Pitt. I didn't know much about him, but he looked pretty good. So maybe they're onto something there.
Maybe, probably not. It's the Wizards. They're terrible, man. They're bad. Tony, thanks for your time, man.
You got it.
That is Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He also covers the Indiana Fever. Just great writer that does just an awesome podcast for Locked On Sports. So that was my guy, Tony East. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, there's ESPN keeps releasing these top 10 player rankings at every position voted on by NFL's executives, coaches, and scouts. And so I decided to make a little top 10 list of my own. You'll hear what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes. The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Tickets. Hope you're having a nice day. Tony East just joined me. We talked a lot of Fever, a lot of Pacers. Had just a blast because it's always a blast whenever I get to talk to Tony. He does a great job. Really, no other way to put it. And to open the show, I talked a little bit about another ESPN top 10 list where they rank the top 10 players based off of voting from executives, scouts, and GMs. And it's like they're sending out all these lists, and I was like, I want to make a list of my own. So I decided that I wanted to list the 10 best coaches in the NFL. And the list makes itself, it's not super profound, but I figured that I would share it with you guys because these are the guys voting on these lists. So number one has to be Andy Reid, back-to-back Super Bowls, all-time winningest coach in both Eagles and Chiefs history. That's pretty incredible. The dude can flat-out coach. As soon as the league shifted to being a little bit more offensively minded, Andy Reid all of a sudden started winning Super Bowls. Okay, he's an awesome head coach. Number two, Sean McVay. He got young Jared Goff to a Super Bowl. I think when that happened, everyone kind of realized, okay, this guy can coach. And then as soon as Matthew Stafford shows up, he wins the Super Bowl, which isn't a coincidence at all. Number three, I put Sean Payton. He got the most out of an old, aging, bad Russell Wilson. Right? He found a way to win 7 games with a bad quarterback while the general manager was trading everything away. He still figured out a way to win 7 games, which is impressive. I think they'll be a bit better this year. I think they've just because Russell Wilson isn't there. So Sean Payton at 3. Number 4, Mike Tomlin. The guy just finds a way to go over 500 every year. Okay, like I wanted to put him lower on my list, but that is an impressive thing because he plays in a tough division against the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Browns twice every year. Like those are 6 tough games that he has to play. Since he became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, there are only 2 teams with better records than Mike Tomlin, the Packers and the Patriots. And Mike Tomlin has done all of this winning with different quarterbacks. Number 5, John Harbaugh. He is the chameleon of the NFL. He is just able to shift and mold his coaching style to fit whatever personnel he has. When he first showed up with the Ravens, he won with defense, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and those guys. And now he's winning with offense, Lamar Jackson, and this dominant run game. The ability to shift like that has to be noticed when making this list. So John Harbaugh at 5. Number 6, I put Kyle Shanahan. Great play caller, best play caller in the sport, but not a great head coach. Okay, he's over-aggressive at times, and I think that costs him. That's what cost him a Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. Just run the football, man. Just run the football. Number 7, Matt LaFleur. He has 56 wins in 5 seasons. That is the second most all-time. Has been to 3 NFC championship games with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers leaves, and it's like, okay, let's figure out if this guy can actually coach or not. The answer is yes. Went on the road, won a playoff game with an inexperienced team, not just an inexperienced quarterback, but everybody on that team just hadn't been in that environment before, and they found a way to beat a good Dallas Cowboys team on the road in Dallas. Number 8, Kevin Stefanski. The Browns have always been terrible. My entire life, the Browns have never been good. Just bad quarterback after bad quarterback, bad head coach after bad head coach. And Kevin Stefanski has shown up at a dumpster fire of an organization. He's made the playoffs twice. He made the playoffs last year with 4 different quarterbacks starting at different points in the season, and he found a way to win. It's impressive. Kevin Stefanski has to be on this list, especially when you provide stability to such a shaky organization. Number 9, Sean McDermott. Not going to knock the guy because he can't beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes because no one can, okay? He has the most wins in the NFL amongst active coaches that haven't won a Super Bowl. The guy's won a lot of games. It's not his fault. He has to play Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs every year in the playoffs. Number 10, the reason why I wanted to do this list. At number 10, I have Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen is one of the 10 best coaches in the NFL. He was a play away from making the playoffs in his first season as a head coach. Gardner Minshew just throws an accurate ball. They make the playoffs. During that season last year, his prodigy young quarterback barely played, only appeared in 12 quarters, and his best offensive player, Jonathan Taylor, barely played due to injury and contract negotiations. Yet, he found a way to win games. He did. Okay, the Colts had a legitimate shot at making the playoffs last year in spite of key players being injured and not playing. And look, I think it's very well established. I think I've laid the groundwork for this pretty well throughout my entire show. Chris Ballard has not done a great job of putting great players on this Colts team. It's a lot of average, right? There's a couple guys that kind of stand out with DeForest Buckner and Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor. But outside of that, it's a lot of average and a lot of question marks. And despite that last year, Shane Steichen was able to figure out a way to win. Look, the Colts, I'm not going to say that they had a good year because they didn't make the playoffs, but they're one play away from it. And someone has to be responsible for the wins. Okay. And it's not Chris Ballard. It's not the talent on this team. So the last guy standing in this equation is Shane Steichen. He's an awesome head coach. He's an awesome play caller. Okay, Jalen Hurts was bad last year, and I believe that part of that was because Shane Steichen was no longer there. Okay, this guy, he can absolutely coach, right? You're not going to find many better young coaches than Shane Steichen. You won't. He's the only young coach that I have on this list. Okay, he's the best young coach in the sport. I'm hoping we get a full year of healthy Anthony Richardson. If we do, I believe that we will then see the master of offense that Shane Steichen is, right? Because we saw it in Philadelphia, got him to a Super Bowl with an awesome offense. And I know that he's capable of doing that here in Indianapolis as well. That's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for tuning in. Podcast will be up shortly wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Just search for the Real Jonathan Smith Podcast, and it should pop up. Coming up here in about 5 minutes, Dan Dockich, he's back on from noon to 3. The Power Hour with Kent Sterling will happen today, and Todd Leary joining us at 1 o'clock. The Dan Dockich Show coming your way here in about 4.5 minutes.